Random House Audio presents The Demon in the Freezer, A True Story by Richard Preston. Read for you by James Naughton.
Something in the Air, October 2nd through 6th, 2001. In the early 1970s, a British photo retoucher named Robert Stevens arrived in South Florida to take a job at the National Enquirer, which is published in Palm Beach County. At the time, photo retouchers for supermarket tabloids used an airbrush. Nowadays, they use computers to clarify news photographs of world leaders shaking hands with aliens, or to give more punch to pictures of 6-month-old babies that weigh 300 pounds. Stevens was reputed to be one of the best photo retouchers in the business. The Enquirer offered him much more than he made working for tabloids in Britain. Stevens was in his early 30s when he moved to Florida. He bought a red Chevy pickup truck and he put a CB radio in it and pasted an American flag decal in the back window and installed a gun rack next to the flag. He didn't own a gun. The gun rack was for his fishing rods. Stevens spent a lot of time at lakes and canals around South Florida, where he would spin cast for bass and panfish. He often stopped to drop a line in the water on his way to and from work. He became an American citizen. Robert Stevens was a kind-hearted man. He filed the barbs off his fishing hooks so that he could release a lot of the fish he caught without doing much damage to them, and he took care of feral cats that lived in the swamps around his house. Not long before he died, he began working for The Sun, a tabloid published by American Media, the company that also owns the National Enquirer. The two tabloids shared space in an office building in Boca Raton. On Thursday, September 27th, Robert Stevens and his wife drove to Charlotte, North Carolina, to visit their daughter, Casey. They hiked at Chimney Rock Park, where each autumn brings the spectacular sight of 500 or more migrating hawks soaring in the air at once, and Maureen took a photograph of her husband with the mountains behind him. By Sunday, Stevens was not feeling well. They left for Florida Sunday night, and he got sick to his stomach during the drive home. On Monday, he began running a high fever and became incoherent. At 2 o'clock on Tuesday morning, Maureen took him to the emergency room of the John F. Kennedy Medical Center in Palm Beach County. A doctor there thought he might have meningitis. 5 hours later, Stevens started having convulsions. The doctors performed a spinal tap on him, and the fluid came out cloudy. Dr. Larry Bush, an infectious disease specialist, looked at slides of the fluid and saw that it was full of rod-shaped bacteria with flat ends, a little like slender macaroni. The bacteria were colored blue with gram stain. They were gram-positive. Dr. Bush thought anthrax. Anthrax, or Bacillus anthracis, is a single-celled bacterial microorganism that forms spores, and it grows explosively in lymph and blood. By Thursday, October 4th, a state lab had confirmed the diagnosis. Stevens's symptoms were consistent with inhalation anthrax, which is caused when a person breathes in the spores. The disease is extremely rare. There had been only 18 cases of inhalation anthrax in the past 100 years in the United States, and the last reported case had been 23 years earlier. The fact that anthrax popped into Dr. Bush's mind had not a little to do with recent news reports about 2 of the September 11th hijackers casing airports around South Florida and inquiring about renting crop-dusting aircraft. Anthrax could be distributed from a small airplane. Stevens went into a coma, and at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon of Friday, October 5th, he suffered a fatal breathing arrest. Minutes later, one of his doctors made a telephone call to the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, in Atlanta, and spoke with Dr. Sharif Zaki, the chief of infectious diseases pathology. Sharif Zaki is a shy, quiet man in his late 40s, with a gentle demeanor, a slight stoop in his posture, a round face, and pale green eyes distinguished by dazzling pupils give him a piercing gaze. He speaks precisely, in a low voice. Zaki went out into the hallway, where his pathology group often gathered to talk about ongoing cases. "Mr. Stevens has passed away," he said. "Who's going to do the post?" someone asked. A post is a post-mortem exam, an autopsy. Zaki and his team were going to do the post. Early the next morning, on Saturday, October 6th, Sharif Zaki and his team of CDC pathologists arrived in West Palm Beach in a chartered jet, and a van took them to the Palm Beach County Medical Examiner's office, which takes up two modern, one-story buildings set under palm trees on a stretch of industrial land near the airport. They went straight to the autopsy suite, carrying bags of tools and gear. The autopsy suite is a large open room in the center of one of the buildings. Two autopsies were in progress. Palm Beach medical examiners were bending over opened bodies on tables, and there was an odor of fecal matter in the air, which is the normal smell of an autopsy. The examiners stopped work when the CDC people entered. "We're here to assist you," Zaki said in his quiet way. The examiners were polite and helpful, but did not make eye contact, and Zaki sensed that they were afraid. Stevens's body contained anthrax cells, although he had not been dead long enough for the cells to become large numbers of spores. In any case, any spores in his body were wet, and wet anthrax spores are nowhere near as dangerous as dry spores, which can float in the air like dandelion seeds looking for fertile ground. The CDC people opened a door in the morgue refrigerator and pulled out a tray. The body had been zipped up inside a Tyvek body bag. Without opening the bag, they lifted the body up by the shoulders and feet and placed it on a bare metal gurney. They rolled the gurney into a supply room and closed the door behind them. They would do the autopsy on the gurney in a closed room to prevent the autopsy tables from being contaminated with spores. The chief medical examiner of Palm Beach County, Dr. Lisa Flanagan, was going to do the primary incisions, while Zaki and his people would do the organ exams. Flanagan is a slender, self-assured woman with a reputation as a top-notch examiner. Everybody gowned up, and they put on N100 biohazard masks, clear plastic face shields, hair covers, rubber boots, and 3 layers of gloves. The middle glove was reinforced with Kevlar. Then they unzipped the bag. The CDC team lifted the body up, gripping it beneath the shoulders and legs, and someone snatched the bags out from underneath it. They lowered the body back onto the bare metal deck of the gurney. Stevens had been a pleasant-looking man with a cheerful appearance. He was a bluish color now, and his eyes were half open. Heraclitus said that when a man dies, a world passes away. The terribly human look on the face of the deceased man disturbed Sharif Zaki. It was so hard to picture this man in life, and then to connect that picture with the body on the gurney. This was the toughest thing for a prosector, and you never got over it, really. Zaki did not want to connect the living man with the body. You had to put it aside, and you could not think about it. His duty now was to identify the exact type of disease that Stevens had, to learn if he had inhaled spores or perhaps had become infected some other way. The team rolled Stevens onto his side and inspected his back under bright lights for signs of cutaneous anthrax, skin anthrax. They didn't find any. Dr. Flanagan took up a scalpel and pressed the tip of the blade on the upper left part of the chest under the shoulder. She made a curving incision that went underneath the nipples, across the chest, and up to the opposite shoulder. Then, starting at the top of the sternum, she made a straight incision down to the solar plexus. This made a cut that looked like a Y, but with a curved top. She finished it with a short horizontal cut across the solar plexus. The opening incision looked rather like the profile of a wine glass. Dr. Flanagan grasped the skin of the chest and pulled it upward, peeling it off. She laid the blanket of skin around the neck. She pulled the skin from the sides of the chest, revealing the ribs and sternum. She took up a pair of gardening shears and cut the ribs, snipping them in a wide circle around the sternum. This was to free the chest plate, the front of the rib cage. When she had finished cutting the ribs, she pushed her fingertips underneath the chest plate and pried it upward, as if she was raising a lid from a box. As Flanagan lifted the chest plate, a gush of bloody fluid poured out from under the ribs and ran down over the body and poured over the gurney and onto the floor. The chest cavity had been engorged with bloody liquid. No one in the room had ever done a post on a person who had died of anthrax. Zaki had studied photographs of autopsies.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?